Oh yeah, fight fans, we're back again. King J 323 Productions. Look, we got an amazing episode for all you watching today. We talked with the legendary Al Bernstein, who's celebrating his 30th year of covering boxing. Wow, truly amazing. We talked about the past, to the present, to the future of the sport. We talked about Manny Pacquiao going over to Showtime and what that means. Should Manny Pacquiao ever fight Floyd Mayweather? We find out who he feels will win that fight and how that fight would be won. We talked about both tournaments going on, the bantamweight tournament, the super middleweight tournament. We find out who his favorite fighter was of all time. We find out what his favorite fight was that he ever called. And look, he's from my hometown of Chicago, so we even find out what his favorite pizza is of all time. So, you know, definitely watch this interview. We even got him to sing at the end, so it's definitely a legendary one. And after this interview, please go to his website, boxingchannel.com, for great fights and great coverage. It's all free. boxingchannel.com, that's his website over there. So let's get into this interview. It took place at the Nonito Donaire versus Fernando Montiel fight in Las Vegas, February 19th. Let's get into this, kids. Come on, let's go. Chicago, stand up. Al Bernstein, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Looking forward to a great fight. I'm happy to be doing this interview, a chance to chat with you and all the boxing fans that see your site.
Absolutely. Prediction on tonight's fight, Montiel Donaire?
You know, I have great respect for Fernando Montiel. I think he's a terrific fighter, and he has been a credit to the sport and has not really had his day in the sun, I don't think, as he should. Having said all that, I just don't know how he beats Donaire. Donaire is a big, tall fighter who has speed, skill, and power. And I think when you have all that, and physically, he has an edge on Montiel. I think Nonito Donaire could be one of the best smaller weight fighters of the last 10 or 15 years.
Right. So you're predicting a late stoppage or just a clinic?
I would say a stoppage. And I think it could come anywhere between rounds 4 and 8.
You know what's funny? So last time you gave me a prediction was at the Pacquiao Margarito fight.
I was probably wrong.
And yeah, I think you told me a beatdown decision, and then we bumped into each other again in the press bathroom, and then you said, "No, I feel he's gonna stop him early." Like, what was that? Did you just get caught up in the whole vibe of
for like, some reason I felt it. I know that's rare for me to even change like that, you know. But for some reason I thought that, and of course I was wrong about that, as a matter of fact. But it did turn out to be a fight in which he was brilliant. Although Margarito had his moments, and that's what made it fun.
Right. Now, what's relevant to Showtime is that the winner of this fight may very well take on the bantamweight tournament winner. That's what's being talked about as well.
Yeah, the bantamweight tournament, which certainly was fun on its first night, great matches, will come down to Joseph Agbeko and Abner Mares, and I think that's going to be a really, really fun fight. You could easily see the winner of that tournament fighting the winner of this fight. Whether it would happen right away, I don't know, or if it will happen, I'd love to see it. And I think it's a good possibility. And it would be a very natural fight to have. Bantamweight division is talent-rich. I mean, it's just so, you have so many good fighters. There's the Darchinians of the world, and Yanni Perez, and of course Mares and Agbeko, and Montiel and Donaire. I mean, it's just you could put those fighters in almost any combination and come up with a great fight.
Right. The majority of people are favoring Abner Mares to win that tournament. Is that still pretty much the case? The vibe?
Yeah, it's interesting. I have to be honest. I would think Agbeko would be a slight favorite in that fight.
Oh, really?
But yeah, only because, I mean, maybe he's not. But and I'm not suggesting he's going to win. And I never predict the fight I'm going to announce. But I think in some ways he's a little sounder than Abner. I like Abner Mares a lot. But what I saw in the last fight and what I see Abner Mares doing more of is not being so much a boxer puncher but a brawler. And I think sometimes he's got great technique. He lets his technique kind of go south on him. And when he does that, he's less effective. And I don't think he can afford to do that against Agbeko. But I certainly think it's a 50-50 fight, and I think either man could win.
Right. Now, let's talk about the biggest star, arguably, in the sport, Manny Pacquiao. The big news everybody's talking about, he's moving to Showtime. He's pretty much a Showtime fighter now. Congratulations on that. Now, what does that mean? Like a lot of people think maybe he's already at the end of his career. Maybe, the fights left aren't as exciting as, the fights that made him the man who he is. I mean, what can Showtime do to enhance that or to, carry that on, or with maybe your sister company, CBS? Would you like to make some thoughts on that?
Well, I think that the key to them bringing him over to Showtime, and I think Bob Arum was pretty honest about that. It wasn't that they were mad at HBO or they thought HBO didn't do an appropriate job. I think they wanted an opportunity, because Manny Pacquiao now is such an iconic figure, and I think we saw when he went to Washington recently, meets the president, stops traffic in Washington, D.C., 3 press conferences across the country in L.A., Vegas, and New York that garner huge buzz. He's now into totally icon territory. And I think that what Bob Arum felt is that if he could bring a fight of Manny Pacquiao's to the mainstream by using an over-the-air network, that it would be, he's been thinking about this for a long time, because boxing isn't on the networks anymore as it was years ago. And I think he wanted to craft a deal that would involve CBS and Showtime. And I think that was absolutely a key to this. And of course, there's going to be the Fight Camp 360 shows on CBS, promotion during the the basketball tournament, and all the rest of it. So I think that was a big part of this. And you made a good point. Are there still compelling fights for Pacquiao? We know there is one against Floyd Mayweather, but it just seems so unlikely that it'll happen, A, because of Mosley's legal problems, and B, because quite honestly, it just looks like Floyd Mayweather doesn't want to fight Manny Pacquiao. I don't know how you can even look at it any differently, but I think there are still some interesting fights. And here's the thing about Pacquiao. He's almost in Ali territory, in that whoever he fights, it's interesting. And here's what he has that's even a little different, certainly different than Mayweather, and even a little different than Ali. He's an attacker, Manny Pacquiao. And watching him in the fight with Margarito, where he clearly landed many more punches, but occasionally was hit, which he will be, and even the Cotto fight, you look at those fights, even when he wins and he's dominant, it's a lot of fun.
Right, I totally agree with you. And I wasn't going to go there, but I guess you brought it up, Mayweather, Pacquiao. Now, does this throw a huge monkey wrench that Pacquiao's pretty much Showtime and Mayweather is, for the most part, an HBO fighter? Can you give us some thoughts on that matter?
It's hard to tell, a big fight like that, I think they're going to want to try and make it. And there are probably a bunch of different ways. I'm certainly not involved on that echelon of decision-making.
Yeah, right.
But by the same token, as a person that's relatively close to the situation, I think there's ways to do that.
Right. We can look at Tyson Lewis right away off the top of our heads. If it's big enough, then it's going to happen. Okay.
Exactly. Where Showtime and HBO had a much more vested, or as vested an interest, let's say, and they found a way to make it happen. I think if Floyd Mayweather decided tomorrow that his #1 priority was fighting Manny Pacquiao, I'm sure Top Rank would find a way to do it.
Absolutely. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, you are pretty much, you favor technical, brilliant, master boxers versus am I wrong on that?
No, I don't think I have a preference. I love watching great boxers, but I love watching aggressive fighters who will lay it all on the line. I like skill, and I think what we sometimes do is we take fighters that are aggressive and throw a lot of punches sometimes, and maybe they're not as perfect, and we kind of negate that they have skills. Perfect example is Ray Mancini, who I thought was a more skillful fighter. I know I'm going back years, but than people gave him credit for, even though he was an aggressive fighter. And so I appreciate both styles. Perfect example is Joe Frazier. He's one of my favorite fighters of all time.
Right.
And nobody was more, like many, he was kind of one-dimensional in a way, because he very seldom used his right hand, but he had a great jab, great hook, and he was very aggressive. And again, there's a perfect example of a guy, he's a skillful fighter. So I like both, I'm like most boxing fans. I want action in a fight, we
all do.
We all want action. I don't care how it comes,
So what, Floyd Mayweather, Manny Pacquiao, if you had to, bet, if you had to put it...
I have a prediction on that fight.
What is that?
It's Manny Pacquiao.
By
decision, and he always throws 1,100 punches or 1,000 punches or 1,200 punches a fight. Floyd Mayweather always throws 500 punches a fight. So my problem is, the way that Mayweather will win the fight is if he knocks Manny Pacquiao out. Or he hurts him so much early that Manny Pacquiao stops attacking.
Right.
But Manny Pacquiao is attacking from all these different angles, throwing 1,000 punches. I don't know how. I know that some people think I'm crazy for saying this. And I love Floyd. I think he's a terrific fighter. I don't know how he wins this fight by decision. If one guy throws 1,100 punches, unless he misses everything, and Pacquiao doesn't miss everything. You know, I just don't know how Mayweather beats him by decision. Mayweather could beat him by a knockout, and if he hits him with one of those right hands, which you will, we're going to know about this fight in the first 4 rounds.
Right.
Mayweather's going to hit him with a really good right hand, and a couple of them, we're going to find out. You know, if he hurts Pacquiao badly, guess what? It's his night.
Well, you know, I always thought, you know, I only see Mayweather in trouble if he is in trouble in the first few rounds, and he pretty much figures out all his opponents and he just breaks them down, and so that's, you know, I had the opinion that Manny would have to stop him, you know, while he's still kind of just figuring out Manny.
But let's say we're in round 9 and 10, okay? We're in round 9 and 10 of that fight. And Mayweather has thrown 422 punches. And even if he's landed 200, let's say he's landing 50%, which is pretty good. And Manny Pacquiao has thrown 800 punches. I guarantee you Manny Pacquiao is going to land 300. So I'm not saying that's the total way to look at this fight, but I'm saying, see, I just see it that, yes, Floyd figures these people out, but he figures out the traditional fighters. Manny Pacquiao is a lefty. He has reinvented himself. He moves. He throws punches from every angle. And I listen. Trust me. I great respect for Floyd Mayweather. He's fantastic. I think that's the very reason. This is all the very reason why Floyd's not that keen on fighting Manny Pacquiao.
Right. Okay. Now let's talk about the other tournament going on Showtime, the Super the Super Middleweight tournament. You know, I actually just talked to Andre Ward, who I favored from the beginning. Maybe it's just because
you were smart.
Maybe it's just because we're American and we want to chant USA. But you know, now we see he's actually doing really well, and he very well may win the whole thing. I also joked with him as well that he told me he has 2 more fights to go. And I made a joke with him. I'm like, man, our grandkids are gonna, graduate college by the time this tournament is gonna be done.
I'll be on Social Security before we get this tournament.
So I think all the fight fans, we love that Showtime gave us this tournament, but it's trial. Is it like trial and error, and we're learning from it? We're learning not to make.
That's true, and I think it's a great tournament. But I agree with you. It's a long process now. It's an interesting long process. That was part of the allure of it, to see how it would play out when you had a long period of time. And I think, for instance, in the semifinals, while it's true that Ward and Abraham, because of the way Abraham has performed recently, may have a little less sizzle, we look at Johnson and Froch, for instance, and we say, we'd always like to see that fight. That's a fight you'd always like to see. And, of course, the possibility, as Andre was saying just a moment ago, he's going to be covering this fight on BoxingChannel.com with me, and he said, if it is he and Froch in the finals, that's a really compelling and interesting match on many levels.
Right. Now, a lot of your fans want to know who's your favorite fighter of all time, and then let's follow that up with who your current favorite fighter is.
Wow. Well, of all time is Sugar Ray Robinson. I grew up, he was at the end of his career when I was born in 1950, so he was in the late 50s. He was already in his 40s, but still an amazing fighter. I'll never forget watching him fight Gene Fullmer when I was a young man, and he ended up with a draw against Fullmer that I thought he won, and a lot of people did. And that would have been his last hurrah to win a title. But Ray Robinson, I think, is the greatest fighter that will ever live. As an announcer, and I try not to have favorites, in that sense. But you have to admire people, and I did a lot of Marvin Hagler fights in the great heyday. I did a number of his fights, Hagler Duran. I did Hagler Mugabe, Hagler Roldan, a lot of them. I admire Marvin Hagler as a fighter and as a man.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, how could you not? You think one reason why all of us just love and miss him so much is because he never comes around? He's like in Italy now?
That's a very good point. That's a terrific point. He's been mysterious. It's like when we think of movie stars or people that never do interviews, right? It makes them more alluring, and that's the thing with Marvin Hagler. He hasn't looked to be in the spotlight. He's been living in Italy, occasionally doing a movie. And once in a while, he'll show up in the States for an event, maybe at the Hall of Fame or something. And even after he and Leonard fought, Leonard was trying to lure him back in the ring again, and he said, "No, I'm done." And it was Ray that was looking for him to get back, And
right.
it was interesting.
Now, are you able to say, like, what's the favorite fight that you ever called? Because I know you kind of made a disclaimer that you can't really...
It's hard, but I can tell you probably the best fight I ever called was Diego Corrales and Jose Luis Castillo.
One, obviously.
Number one. Yeah. I only did one. I didn't do the second one, yeah. But to me, that was... Because in terms of skill and excitement, it was the best fight. They fought so skillfully, but they were so exciting. And I also did Hagler Hearns, which of course was a great fight, but Castillo Corrales was Hagler Hearns ×3. So,
and I think people are they're so envious of you because you got to call both of those fights. I mean, to call one of those fights,
it's funny. And there are a lot of broadcasters. I mean, many of my colleagues have called great fights over the years. But to be able to do both of those, and the other one that always jumps at the top of the list for me is the first Evander Holyfield-Riddick-Bowe fight.
Right.
That was an astonishing fight, but there have been so many over the years,
Give some advice to a lot of the up-and-coming media who look up to you, who want to be like you, who want to even have your personality. I mean, a lot of people they like you as a person. You're very likable, and everything from your voice. A lot of announcers, they change their voice to some very fake macho, like yeah, like you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So like,
it's funny you're saying this because I've always thought, it's funny. When I started doing the ESPN show, and I'm not even sure. I hope this was the right decision, but sometimes I wonder. Sometimes I say to myself, it's the squeaky wheel that gets more attention, and sometimes especially in broadcasting, especially these days. By the way, I think there's many ways to skin a cat in broadcasting. I mean, you can do a perfect example is sports radio. You can be Jim Rome on the radio. You can be Dan Patrick. You can be Colin Cowherd. I did a radio show for 5 years on an ESPN affiliate where I had a much different style than them. So there are a lot of ways to do it. I do what fits me. When I started doing the ESPN series, and we were going to be on 42 weeks a year, which we were, 40-some weeks, maybe more than that, I made a conscious decision. There's no season in boxing,
Right.
I said I better wear well with people if I'm going to be on 40-some weeks a year. Otherwise, they are going to get sick of me. Some broadcasters have a season. And so if I won't mention any names, but if they're a little more over the top, or some people, they're going to be a 50-50 deal where 50% are going to say, yeah, I love that, and then 50% are going to say, not so much. They can get away with it because they have time off. But in boxing, there's no season. So my feeling is you need to wear well with people.
And, and that's another thing. Even when you do criticize people, you do it in a very professional, respectful manner. I mean, people just love that about you. And I think, a lot of this realness comes from perhaps your upbringing from the city of Chicago, where I'm also from, my hometown.
We're all in Chicago and stick together. Well, I'm going to tell you something. First of all, people that are on the media, sometimes I think they don't realize it. When you say something, it has implications. You're talking about a person. So I might say somebody's not using their left hook enough. That's different than saying, oh, they're not trying hard enough. There's a difference, or oh, this guy quit. Or it's easy to sit there at ringside, especially in boxing. I'm not. Listen, I did some amateur boxing just enough to know what it feels like to be in the ring. I am not qualified to say what it takes for a professional who's in his 30th fight, how he's feeling, or she, in the case of women's boxing. So I'm certainly not going to denigrate. I never denigrate a boxer. It takes more skill and courage to get in the ring than any other sport, and I would never denigrate them. And I think what you say has implications, and it's so easy to just be flipped and act as if what you say has no ramifications.
Okay, real quick, what is the #1 pound for pound Chicago deep dish pizza in the world?
Oh, okay, I'll tell you. There are two: Malnati's, which is out in the suburbs,
Illuminati's,
which is good, and then Uno's in Chicago. Those are the two that, for me, are the best.
What do you like? I love those. I love Gino's East.
Gino's very good.
Gino's East. Giordano's is great too. They have that in Florida.
That's good.
So I would love to see it come to the West Coast. I would love to see all these.
Pizza is not in the West Coast. Pizza is not not as good as Chicago. There's no question about that.
We plug some of your books for all your fans so they can read up on your books, your CDs.
Well, I'm actually working on a book right now. It's called, which I hope will be out in about 8 or 9 months or maybe a year. It's called 30 Years, 30 Undeniable Truths, and I'm celebrating my 30th year in boxing, a little over 30 years.
Congratulations!
Thank you,
amazing.
I appreciate it. And so it's going to be kind of a tongue-in-cheek book, you know, just a fun book, looking back at a lot of different stories and talking about people and different situations. And the big thing, and the other big thing I'm working on now is executive producer of BoxingChannel.com, which is I think there's room for an all video channel on the internet, and we've done a pretty good job with it, and we're moving forward. And so I'd love the fans to take a look at that. We've done. I'm proud of it. I think we're doing a good job with that.
Now, and then your bio says you're also a singer, correct?
I have done some music, not lately, but I did. The first music show I did was at Caesar's Palace the weekend of the Hagler-Leonard fight. Believe it or not.
Wow.
Yeah, how about that?
Legendary.
I picked a small debut. We did a show there at Caesars, and I think back on it now, and I think how presumptuous of me. I'd done musical work in Chicago, but never on that level. But because, you know, being known, and they had some famous people do an acts before, so I said no, I guarantee you we'll get a lot of press, which we did, and it went pretty well. And I think now I think back and I cringe. You know, what was I thinking? But it worked out well. It was fun. And then over the years, I've done a lot of musical shows. And then I morphed into a show called The Boxing Party, which was where I do 4 or 5 songs, and there were a lot of special material. And then we do trivia questions and all that stuff. So because even when I was singing, doing the musical shows, people would come up to me. Like I'd step down with the band who was doing something. They'd walk up to me and start asking me boxing questions. And I'm like, well, I'm in the middle of a musical show. I said, I'm trying to remember the next lyrics. I said, you're asking me about, you know, this fight. So then I thought, well, if that's what they want, and I'll sing some, and then we'll do some boxing stuff.
Can we end this interview with you taking us out with a couple bars?
Well, here's a song that I used to sing when I was at ESPN. I woke up in Chicago, had my eggs and toast, packed my overnight bag, then headed for the coast. The airport's always crowded, but everybody's gotta sing the blues. I got the ESPN Sports Announcers Blues. There you go.
Thank you so much. You're definitely a legend, and we appreciate you taking the time.
Hey, I appreciate you having me on here, and I appreciate all the stuff you write.
Chicago, stand up.